Welcome to Eye on Africa. The headlines: tension in Niger as logistical problems send voting for president into a second day. The opposition warning the president not to expect a first-round victory. More controversy in Uganda, where President Museveni's main rival was bundled into a police van after vowing to lead protests against a poll he says was rigged. We'll be heading to South Africa, where traditional healers are up in arms as the government plans to tighten up regulation in the health sector. We start with some exclusive pictures of Ban Ki-moon landing in Burundi for his first visit during a political crisis, which has seen more than 400 people killed. Well, 4 people died in the latest clashes as the UN chief arrived in the capital, Bujumbura. He's set to hold talks with opposition leaders as well as President Pierre Nkurunziza, whose controversial decision to run for a third term last April plunged the country into months of violence. Rights groups say security forces have carried out extrajudicial executions and other violations. Niger now, where voting in presidential and parliamentary elections has stretched into a second day, that in regions where logistical problems delayed preliminary results. President Mamadou Issoufou is hoping to secure a second term. He's vowing to crush Islamist militants and reduce severe poverty in the country. But his opponents have accused him of authoritarian tactics in the run-in to the poll. Laurent Bestachet has more.
The voting was still ongoing, but Monday morning the first ballot boxes were already being cracked open in Niger's capital. The official results are to be announced this week, but could now be delayed due to the late arrival of election material. For supporters of Mahamadou Issoufou, the incumbent president remains favorite to win a second term.
We're very confident because we have a track record, we have a program, and we've built a very strong political alliance. That's why these activists and supporters are so enthusiastic and optimistic about the results.
During his campaign, the president had claimed he would easily win by knockout. But as numbers began to pour in, the opposition said it was confident the election would be decided in the second round.
The fact that his so-called knockout has failed is already a victory for us, and it's a setback for him, because he made it a point of honor to win in the first round.
The opposition has denounced instances of electoral fraud and voter intimidation, but the country's interior minister said the ruling party intended to win fair and square.
Well, reporter Nicolas Jamin is in Niger's capital, Niamey, where he has more on the tension as people await results.
It's in this building in the capital, Niamey, here behind me, that the Electoral Commission is compiling the results. The first results were announced this Monday evening, but it's a process that's going to take several days now. The big question here in Niger is what will happen when the results are announced. There are fears of violence because the presidential party has been saying for weeks now that it's certain of winning in the first round, whereas the opposition leaders are saying that they will win in the runoff. Just a few minutes ago, I spoke to the campaign director of Hama Amadou. He's one of the opposition leaders, and I asked him if he feared violence at the announcement of the results. He told me that his party members were pacifists, but that if the presidential party quickly announced a victory of the incumbent Mahamadou Issoufou, then he did not know what could happen on the streets of Niamey. So clearly here, the tensions are running high in Niger as we await the presidential results.
Nicolas Jamin reporting there to Uganda next, and more controversy in the wake of President Yoweri Museveni's victory in Thursday's election. His rival, Kizza Besigye, has been detained after vowing to lead a protest march against a result which he says was rigged. The representative of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in Uganda visiting Besigye in the police station where he's being held. He had this to say.
He has not been informed formally or informally why he's been detained. And as a matter of fact, we were the first guests, so to speak, that met him. So until now, he has been kept without any information or without any access.
Well, correspondent Duncan Woodside's in Kampala. He has more on Mr. CJ's predicament and the latest reactions to this election.
The streets of Kampala were quiet here on Monday. That's the same as it was on Sunday. And indeed, After the announcement of the results on Saturday afternoon, Museveni, of course, triumphing in the first round, but there has been doubt cast on the credibility of the process by various international bodies, including the US State Department, the European Union's observer mission, and also the Commonwealth. Significant concerns about the late start of the process in Kampala, which is perceived to be an opposition stronghold, and also, according to the EU, a lack of transparency and independence on the part of the Electoral Commission. Now, in another development today, the main opposition leader, Kizza Besigye, was, of course, once again arrested. That's several times now in the past week that he's been arrested. He was this time held for around 10 hours before being released. That's in a context where he had intended to march upon the premises of the Electoral Commission to present what he describes as significant irregularities, significant discrepancies in terms of the returns that his agents had filled out vis-à-vis the official return. So a lot of controversy still here in Uganda about that electoral process. There are a few days, a week or so, that Besigye has in order to present a challenge to the Supreme Court, and that's an avenue which he says he is very much considering. That is, of course, if he's able to reach the Supreme Court.
Duncan Woodside in Kampala. In Chad, one student's been killed and 5 others wounded after soldiers broke up a protest in the northern city of Faya Lajou. As people continue to vent their anger over a gang rape whose repercussions touch on the families of senior figures in power. 5 men, 3 of them the sons of generals, have been arrested, as well as alleged accomplices, including a son of the foreign minister. The victim's father is a candidate in April the 10th presidential elections. In Zimbabwe, a special welcome from staff for President Robert Mugabe. The veteran leader treated to an elaborate cake and a rendition of Happy Birthday after turning 92 at the weekend. A massive public event is planned for next week, but all of this has been criticised by the president's opponents, as it does against the backdrop of a widespread drought, with 3 million Zimbabweans dependent on food aid. South Africa next, where an extraordinary baby snatching trial has been making headlines. This after a woman charged with stealing a newborn girl briefly appeared in court. A Stephanie nurse was taken from a hospital in Cape Town 18 years ago and raised by the accused and her husband. The case only coming to light when school pupils remarked on a striking resemblance between the girl and another at a school she just joined. Tests proving the pair were biological sisters. We're going to finish up in South Africa, where a new draft law is looking at cracking down on the influence of traditional medicine. The government wants much tighter regulation in the health sector, and that's got so-called Sangomas up in arms.
Here in the heart of Soweto, everybody knows this house. This is where Thokozile practices. She's a popular traditional healer known as a Sangoma. She claims to help patients every week with health issues ranging from diabetes to depression. Thokozile is one of 20,000 Sangomas in South Africa.
You don't go to school for that. It's a calling that you have to help people. You see, from our forefathers.
She says it's her ancestors who guide her to cure people and choose the right herbs. The South African government is now asking these healers to register all their remedies, but most of them refuse to give away their secrets.
It's wrong because we're not bothering them with their recipes and stuff like that. Why can't they leave us in peace and then let us practice what our forefathers have given us?
In Johannesburg, the economic capital, Sangomas have begun to fight back. Members of the Organization for Traditional Healers meet regularly to debate the new bill, which will force them to declare their age, income, and proof of training.
Government is threatening the profession. Government is putting in place, mad legislation. And this legislation are made to distract us from our core business.
Thokozile is worried her business will be affected should the bill become law. Her mother, who has been a Sangoma for 20 years, fears the government will eventually stop them from practicing.
And then when the patient died here, they said, I gave the patient the wrong muti. But when they die in hospital, no one blamed the doctor or the sister or whatever.
With 80% of the South African population still consulting traditional healers, passing this legislation could well prove to be an uphill battle.
That's it for Eye on Africa. Do stay with us here on Live from Paris. Mark Owen will be here with the world news headlines very shortly.
Focus.
Love forbidden by everything, by tradition, caste, or religion. 8 couples, 8 different countries, 8 impossible love stories. The daily struggles of modern-day Romeos and Juliets for the right to love no matter what society dictates. Forbidden Love, a new series on the right to love. Watch it on France 24 and France24.com.